is a Smokeless Friday, so it's just me. But Payton Soicher of RankingsRightNow.com joins us here. But Payton, before we get into the rankings, I'm glad that you're here to hear to throw your 2 cents into this. The most Miami story ever.
Okay.
This is the most Miami recruiting story ever, and it comes from Clinton Portis. So let me check the source here. I saw this on College Sports Only. I'm not sure where he said this, podcast or something. So Garrett, feel free to chime in on this as well.
Okay.
My third visit, I go to Miami, and we're in the strip club, Portis said. You know we got dancers coming, and I got a dancer on me, and this MF look at me and say, "Are you coming?" To which Portis replied, "Yes." I shook my head yes, tilted my head back, eyes rolled back, and that's the last thing I remember. That is the last thing he remembers. But, and the author says, you'll pardon the pun, not the only climax of the evening. And I go to breakfast, I get on the elevator, I'm hungover, and bing, the door opens. One of the coaches walks in and says, "Oh, man, congratulations, we heard you committed last night." I said, "Huh?" We go down one more floor. The next coach gets on and says, "Oh, man, congratulations. We're so excited you're here," Portis said. Portis said it took him a few attaboys from the coaches to figure out he had committed to the U. And it wasn't Miami. It was the lap dance, Portis said. That, there will never be a more Miami story than that.
No, that's the epitome of Miami stories. Yes.
Absolutely. And he was on that team. Holy cow. What a ridiculous story.
Yeah, he's had some crazy ones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even with the Broncos, I think he had some. He was with the Broncos. Yeah. He's had some very interesting things to say over the years.
Yes. He is let me see where he's from. I think, if I'm remembering right, he's also from a region of Florida that's like kind of rural, so it's no, he's from Mississippi. Okay. So he's from Mississippi. So like, you know, this is a Mississippi kid down in big time Miami. Like you can see this all like
this is different. Yes.
Like, yeah, absolutely. Payton, last week we talked about Alabama and Georgia and what happens if one team blows the other one out. For the first half of that game, I was at the SMU FSU game. I was about to text you and say, like, we might have our scenario right here. On this. Now, Alabama is number one in one of the polls. They're not in the other. But what did you think when that was going on last week?
So, you know, it was more of where I thought Georgia was going to land. That was the question. Was, okay, Alabama probably, if not clearly, is going to take the number 1 slot. Where is Georgia going to land in all of this? And you know, you just take your eyes off of it for a minute. It's becoming a little bit lopsided. And then it got like the greatest fourth quarter ever. Like it was just so much fun and so amazing. So when we went over our predictions last weekend, in the scenario where Alabama won, we said Alabama was going to be the number 1 team and Georgia was going to fall down to 9. Now that changed which is the cool thing about rankings right now is that it's real time. Ole Miss loses earlier in the day. So that opens a slot up, right? Everyone can kind of shift up in the rankings a little bit. So now that moves to 8. And I'm thinking, ooh, that might be the perfect spot for them, right? They're clearly getting outplayed. This is way different than everything else. And then by the end of the game, I thought, I don't know where Georgia's going to be anymore. Will Georgia be 2? Will Georgia be 9? Will there be 8? So, you know, I was glad that from the first point that we talked about was, hey, the winner of this game is going to be the number 1 seed in the AP poll. And that's what happened. And that's really cool what this algorithm can bring. But I think that last fourth quarter really changed a lot of perceptions of how we even view that game. Even if you look at social media after, it was like, that was the most amazing game ever. Was it the most amazing game ever? Was it the greatest fourth quarter ever? Right? Like in our newsletter that I published after the game was, if you look at what rankings right now is trying to accomplish, it's trying to just look at a box score and say, how do people react to that? There's no way to tell the whole story to an algorithm. of what happened in that game. And if you would have asked a lot of the AP poll at halftime, give us your rankings right now, I don't think that they're putting Georgia at 4 or 5. I really don't. I think they're saying that's a bottom top 10 tier. So I'd be interested in what you think their ranking would have been had it ended up being a big blowout.
Yeah, it was such a ridiculously intriguing game, and we do have some teams already in the chat to go through.
Let's do it
later on. Like let's get to a couple of things. Yeah, but want to get to some of the brass tacks of this. The best game this week as far as ranked is A&M and Mizzou.
Yes.
With the prediction, you have A&M winning 25-23, which falls within the spread of that game there. And so A&M wins 25-23. They shoot up the rankings, 14 spots to number 11, and Mizzou drops 7 spots to number 16. And then we're starting to see everybody's with the loss or the undefeated teams that people don't like as much because of their strength of schedule. Right. Is this where this gets we can start to see this really get interesting and we can see some crazy movement, especially based on what we saw, Ole Miss lost last week and they took a tumble like you just mentioned.
I think the Mizzou one makes the most sense out of those two scenarios of A&M shooting way up and Mizzou dropping 7 slots. If we look back to last week, the algorithm had Louisville out after the loss to Notre Dame. And so they end up losing to Notre Dame. They drop a little bit, right? They drop 7 slots, but they don't drop out of the AP poll like the algorithm predicted. So that middle grouping is really interesting to try and focus in on. And that's where a lot of those big swings happen. If you look at the top 10, the movements were all on. We were perfect on where we predicted Ole Miss to drop. We were almost perfect on Utah. We had Utah dropping to 19. They slap at 18. So those top tier schools, it's been very, very accurate. It's in the middle of the pack and in the later 20 to 25 range that we're seeing a little bit more aggressive swings from the model. Now, the model is trying to compensate all of the different things that have gone on in the past and try and come up with what's called the best fit. Right now, it thinks the best fit is to put A&M up into that 11 spot. I think they'll be closer into that, maybe the 15 range. I think it would be a significant win. Regardless of how you want to put it, Mizzou's a top 10 team. They're voted as a top 10 team. They've stayed there almost the entire season. So right now, I would say that drop to 16 for Mizzou seems right. That A&M one might be a little bit too aggressive for my human way that I'm deciphering this, but sometimes these algorithms might know a little bit more and take things, take some bias out that we might be using as fans.
Yeah, I never because if A&M is 11 and Notre Dame is at 14, well, Notre Dame beat them at their place.
Right.
And that to me is where it never, it sits well where, yes, I understand that Notre Dame lost a nail-biter to Northern Illinois. I get that. But A&M lost to Notre Dame, so let's just make sure that they can be right next to each other, but Notre Dame has to be before them in the rankings because they have the same record, and A&M's loss is to them.
Well, you're using a very fatal flaw, which is called logic, right? You have to be very careful about that. So we've seen in the past, and in 2021, Michigan State had beaten Michigan. Kenneth Walker III ran for 5 touchdowns, right? Next week, they lose to Purdue. In the following rankings after that, Michigan, I think, was ranked 6. Michigan State's ranked 7. And everyone said, wait a minute. Didn't Michigan just lose to Michigan State? How could they be flipped in the rankings so soon? So when it comes to a lot of these types of things, sometimes logic has to go out the window. I talk to a lot of fans on social media, which have very similar things to say, well, they should move up in the rankings because it was a close game. That's not how this works. A lot of South Carolina fans love to say that. Well, Kentucky just beat Ole Miss. We beat Kentucky. So that means we're a ranked team. Not necessarily. It's a whole conundrum of things that are going on. So although you're right to say that A&M lost to Notre Dame, therefore you got to think that Notre Dame would be ahead of them. That's not how this works sometimes. It's very recent bias. These voters are really going after what they know of right now. And even though, and that's one of the cool things about building this algorithm and not just doing a power ranking, it's just trying to actually interpret what is going on in the brains of these people, of these polls that we follow, right? You might not agree with the poll, but it's what we believe they will vote based on how they voted in the past.
Okay, so let's get into some requests.
Let's do it.
DJ Payton now spinning it on the ones and twos. The first one was for Army and Navy, who you have this week. You've already done this because they are both at the bottom of the rankings. They're right there. You have them both winning and moving up a couple of spots.
I think that, oh, here we go. Let me just log on in real quick. So for anyone who wants to do, it's free for everybody. Let's do, oops, mess it up. Sorry for not being more prepared. I thought it was already set up, ready to go. So for that Army and Navy game, or for Army and Navy, the algorithm loves them, by the way. Every week, drives me a little bit crazy, but every week they put them 24-25. Every single week. They're saying at some point they got to break through. So, you know, we'll see exactly what they want to do with those rankings. But yes, as of right now, we have those 24-25 every single week. That's the main focal point. Did you say that you wanted to do a score with them or no?
Yeah. Let's. Their Army's playing Tulsa, Navy's playing Air Force.
Okay, great. So Army is playing Tulsa. Let's go ahead and open it up to all teams since they're not ranked in the top 25. Army and Tulsa, what are we thinking?
You have the score here on the thing. It's 30. Let's just get 31-19 so people can see it in real time, like how it predicted out.
Oh, okay, great. So that is the score, 31-19. And if we look at right here with the top rankings, some other ones that are right here. UNLV, Arizona, it just missed the AP poll last weekend, but they're sitting right there at that 25, 20 or the 24 spot right now. If we change, I don't think even if we change that score of that Army score, even if you make it something like, 50-0. Let's see if it changes the opinions that it will run the simulation and see what ends up happening. But it looks like they move up one more slot. So that's kind of the real prediction right there. But if you look at the rest of these schedules and specifically, and don't mean to jump topic too quickly, but one of the biggest ones right now that we're seeing is James Madison has like real clarity moving forward. If you look at all of James Madison had a couple votes in the AP poll last week. They're really favored in our college football algorithm. So if we go ahead and look at the college football selection committee instead, I know they haven't released any rankings, but we still have an algorithm that we've reverse engineered how they would typically vote. Right now, James Madison after this weekend is sitting in the top 25. So that week 10 poll that's coming up in a few weeks that everyone's kind of looking forward to because they're the real rankings that really matter. James Madison's in that top 25, and they don't have a single game, according to ESPN, with less than a 69% chance of winning. So they have very good team of five, or like outside of the power conferences of making one of those playoff games right now.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Let me ask you about and maybe I would assume the same thing as Army. Like, there's not much they can do to like bust through, to get to like 12th or something. If they blew out Air Force, SMU and Louisville. Louisville favored to win, but what happens if SMU wins that one? Let's just say 31-24. Because SMU has the one loss to BYU, who's now ranked. They're undefeated, and they're on a hot streak, blowing out the last two teams they played.
Perfect. So let's go ahead and let's go to that Louisville game. So we have SMU, Louisville. Let's just flip the score. How about that? 31-25.
Okay.
So here we go. We'll go ahead and run the simulation. We're running it on the AP poll rankings simulation. So as of right now, it definitely knocks Louisville out. That'd be back-to-back losses. I don't believe I see SMU in here. So let's go ahead and expand this out to all teams. And SMU right there, up to 39. So okay. They're now picking in. SMU is another really great example. By the way, I actually ran these predictions for the rest of the season. So not just looking at week 7, but for the rest of the year using the college football. And SMU is a very interesting use case. So this is the cumulative percentage of their likelihood of being ranked X through week 14. So not going into the conference championship, but just saying through the regular season, where do we think that they'll be ranked? And let's go ahead and run this up a little bit more. So for SMU specifically, if we're looking at the top 12 teams, there's an 18% chance that SMU, through our simulation, cracks that top 12 team. So going to a top 12 team going into the conference championship. So that's a big make or break scenario. So even if you want to say, you know, rank 15, 16, 17, one of these, hey, have a big win that might put you finally in, you know, we're looking at roughly about a 30% chance that they're going to be in a contender spot going into that that final championship weekend.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like, again, that BYU loss really kind of put a dent in them. But
yeah,
if BYU continues to be better,
it just it makes their resume look better.
Yeah, it makes their. But yeah, that BYU loss really, you know, because I think people had a lot of positive vibes around SMU, and they probably still should. But this is going to be a test. This is, you know, obviously they're in a tougher conference now. So,
correct.
You know, Louisville is tougher. You know, they do have a pretty favorable ACC schedule for year one, but that's really interesting. Do you see any potential trap games this week on the schedule? Because this is one of those weeks where it looks like everything should go chalk. You know, there's not much like outside of that A&M game, but there's some traps in here, right?
Oh, for sure. There's always a couple. Tennessee and Arkansas, people are not like Arkansas's record doesn't reflect that the games that they lose are really close. And that's a competitive team right there. So on the road in Arkansas, is this a sleep week for Tennessee, right? Maybe they don't come out all guns firing. I don't know. I don't see Auburn and Georgia really being a trap game. The other one is Ole Miss and South Carolina. Ole Miss just had a shaky one at home. Now they have to play another really tough opponent with a really good schedule. And, you know, as we walked through on the What If Simulator last week, if they beat LSU, they're probably a top 15, top 18 team right now. So if this was 12 versus 18, I think a lot more eyes would be focused over here. That seems like a trap game to me right there for Ole Miss. That's going from like rank of, what were they, 5 or 6 all the way down to the low 20s maybe. So that's the biggest one right now. UW is projected to beat Michigan as of right now, according to Vegas. ESPN FBI has a little bit favored towards Michigan, but that's a big drop that you're seeing right there. So I would say these two right here are the big ones that people should pay a little bit more attention to and say that might be something that could really change the trajectory of both of those seasons going into getting close to playoff time.
Payton Soicher, rankingsrightnow.com. Payton, I love it every week. I feel smarter. I never had to take statistics. Or anything like this. I skated through math. Like I'm not a math guy. I like to talk to math guys.
If you think I voluntarily and excitedly walked into statistics class for the first time, you'd be completely wrong. So yeah, you just kind of stumble into it and you think, these are like, I didn't know I could solve a problem like this. So I'm happy to be the statistics fill-in though, if you ever need it.
Yeah. What was your calculator? What was you have like TA82?
So what's really interesting is I had 2 calculators. One was the brick that you would get for $3 at Target, right?
Yeah.
And that was to make sure that you actually knew the math. And so they didn't want anyone with advanced statistics or whatever. I majored in actuarial mathematics, which is the study of risk.
Yeah.
And so I was like a whiz on like how to work the brick calculator to like save things. And I felt way smarter with the brick calculator. And then I had like like the TI-89 calculator with like the fun graphs and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And when the teacher's not looking, you're playing with the bricks and whatnot. So
yeah.
that's what we were doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Payton, thanks so much. Go to rankingsrightnow.com, register, and fall into a rankings like it's just a rabbit hole. You can do it for every team in the country if you want to, and predict on the way out. So it is great stuff. Payton, we'll talk to you again next week.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate your time.
All right. I love having Payton on the show every week. When